My name is Christine Bound. I'm Vice President of Professional Development and Industry Engagement at Art Center. I want to welcome everyone for being here today. I'm thrilled to share, to welcome Thomas Müller, who is an alum of our graduate media design program, a great friend and collaborator. Thomas and I have known each other for a very long time and also done a lot of work together and had a lot of fun together in Berlin, where Art Center has a studio over the last decade, which is growing and growing. And Thomas had an opportunity to come to Art Center last February and present the Fjord Trends 2020 report and do a workshop for our students. And that was obviously before the world changed so dramatically. So it's a real pleasure to welcome Thomas back virtually to Art Center and to have this time together today. Thomas currently is the Global Design Lead Strategy Consulting at Accenture Interactive. They are a global force, and Thomas will be sharing a bit to start off about the work of Accenture Interactive, and then we will kick off into the trends report, followed by Q&A. We're hoping to save at least 10 minutes or so for Q&A at the end. So if you have questions, if you could please add those to the Q&A tab, or queue, I should say, within Zoom, and then we'll do our best to get to all of them at the end. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Thomas Müller. Thank you, Thomas.
Excellent. Thank you, Christine. Thank you for this very, very warm welcome. I'm absolutely thrilled to be back with this group. I know we have folks from around the world, Art Center students, Art Center alumni, and given that Art Center decided to really make these kinds of programs very open and accessible and inclusive, there's probably lots of other folks on. Art Center College of Design is really who shaped me, who I am as a designer and professional. So giving back through this platform is a very special moment for me. And as Christine said earlier, we're doing this now the second year in a row. So for quick context setting, I joined Accenture Interactive and Fjord in 2015, and our collective focus is what we call the business of experience. We see experience as the intersection really of purpose and innovation to grow people, to grow society, to grow industries, and to grow business itself. Our best work, has human purpose at the core. For us, purpose is all about designing, building, and enabling experiences that are transformative and that improve human lives. And to achieve our larger organization's purpose, which is to deliver on technology and human ingenuity, in Accenture Interactive, we embrace humanity. We're absolutely fascinated by how human connections happen, how they feel, and why they are so meaningful and often, hopefully, motivating. Our craft is all about applying that human connection to the entirety of the front stage of experiences, also known as the front office and beyond, and doing that at speed and scale in tandem with intelligent technologies to create value for our clients and ultimately humans at large. Now, we do that in the context that today people experience brands in totally new ways, and especially the last 12 months have only accelerated that change. What's more, consumers, people out there have liquid expectations, which is something that we've talked about for quite some time. Liquid expectations, which they really carry from one brand to the next. If you think about a public service organization is suddenly being held to the same standards as a retail brand. Healthcare companies find themselves competing with tech companies. Digital experience has made consumers entirely industry agnostic in our expectations, forcing many brands to really reach a higher bar of experience that's set by the leaders across all industries. And as these numbers behind me on the screen or to the left of me show, in these days, experience is everything. Yet there's way too many organizations out there that are unfortunately out of sync, that are too rigid, or they are moving at a pace that is slower, much slower than consumer change. Now, when executed well, customer experience has yielded very good results. More customers, better sales, deepened loyalty. The importance of customer experience is not going away, but its value proposition is stalling. One of the latest Forrester research reports shows increasingly diminishing results from the customer experience momentum. And we are seeing that a lot of work is trending towards what is often referred to as the sea of sameness. On the other hand, our own research that we've conducted really led to the fundamental premises that we believe there needs to be an evolution away from the way that customer experience is typically implemented today. Because in the future, experience is no longer the remit of just one person or one function. It's really the entire organization that needs to come together around a common cause, a great experience that is defined not by what you offer, but by how you enable your customers to achieve the outcomes that are most important to them. So this is our focus and what we call the business of experience. And it starts by putting humans at the center. One of my jobs is to champion specifically the role of human-centered design from that home of Accenture Interactive across the rest of the firm, the wider Accenture, on client projects and through learning experiences that inspire and hopefully scale. It's not an easy job, it's challenging, but it's really fun at the same time and rewarding when you start to see how the vocabulary that we have established as a practice over decades, the approach, the mindset and behaviors of so many colleagues with very different backgrounds all begin to rally around the importance of putting humans at the center. You know that what you're doing, I know that what I'm doing is relevant. Now, with this quick context, let me shift to the reason why Christine and Art Center invited me back. It is to share with you our trends, the Fjord Trends 2021, which is an annual thought leadership report here at Accenture put together by Fjord. This year, the report is, it's hard to believe, it's in its 14th year. Over these years, it has become one of the iconic publications that Accenture puts out in the market. The report is the result of a yearly structured future casting process across the globe that involves thousands at this point in time, thousands of designers from our 35 studios around the world. Now, this picture, this image, I shared it just earlier with Christine. This was us 1 year ago. It was a field, for those of you who are familiar with Art Center, LA Times Media Center, people standing in the hallways. It was a wonderful evening to share Trends 2020 with you. And then the following morning, a set of workshops around future casting, which I tremendously enjoyed. And I learned a lot from the students. There was so much curiosity and amazing, promising talent at Art Center. So while this year, today, right now, I'm sadly not with you in person, instead on this Zoom call, the exciting part is that this is accessible to an even wider audience. As a quick reminder, these were the 2020 trends published before COVID-19 really changed everything. Nevertheless, many of these trends played out, be it moving to contactless experiences, curbside pickup in retail, expanding from a focus on profit only to include purpose, to just name a few. Realigning the fundamentals was the overall meta trend last year, which touched on the trajectory, as I went into quite some detail a year ago, of capitalism with profit as the only metric. Concerns about the environment, tension between the dominance of the technology industry governments, and data privacy were all part of this realignment. So now let's take a look to 2021. So the pandemic only accelerated the realignment of the fundamentals we already saw in 2020, as I just mentioned. It changed how we live, how we work, how we learn, how we shop, how we play, as well as how and where we experience things. It highlighted what's important to us and inspired community spirit and ingenuity. Mapping out new territory, as you just saw in this little trailer, is our meta trend for 2021. So as we look to the future, a wealth of potential worlds open up in front of us. Some of those worlds might be scary, but then some or many are quite exciting. All of them are, however, largely unexplored. 2021 will be about creating new maps to help us uncover what's yet to come and planning a route to the world we actually want to live in. We're all exploring, which is creating a safe space for experimentation, for prototyping, and for learning. You know, throughout history, after a global crisis, a new era of thinking has begun. Right now, we have an opportunity to decide what we want the 21st century Renaissance to look like. In many ways, we believe the 21st century actually really began only a month ago, on the 1st of January in 2021. In Fjord Trends, in these 7 trends, we dive into the topics that we believe will be the most important for organizations, employees, and customers over the next 12 months and beyond. And as I mentioned earlier, they're co-created by our global community of designers and researchers. So the first trend this year is called collective displacement. Now, what is collective displacement about? In 2020, literally how and where we experience things changed, leaving us feeling really disconnected from familiar comforts, both big and small. If you think about place, we've seen a big shift from city to countryside in so many places around the world. City real estate prices, that's the obvious one. But there are others, more subtle perhaps, but just as seismic to the essential organization of our existence. When we think about how our activities have changed, a dramatic sudden shift from in real life to online, be it yoga, be it cycling, be it shifting, a session on campus to a Zoom session. It turns out this may have shown us new ways to be with surprising experience gains as well as absolutely losses. Dramatic change to community, from together to alone or just in parts. Think about music events enjoyed together. Think about those going to church and practicing their religion together. Or when you go to a sporting event, be it a football match. And then fourth, most importantly, we've seen and experienced the dramatic loss of the sense of agency really over our choices. The word lockdown says it all. The control, the agency we have over what we want to do and how we decide to enjoy and shape our time and our days it has been locked down. Now, as our patterns of movement have changed, brands are facing a visibility challenge, which really flows two ways. The customer brands knew once is gone. And this is complicated on top of it by tracking ad tech disruption, which is biting already through new releases in iOS and Android. So brands really have to begin to question everything that they thought they knew about their customers and understand what shifts in their behavior will be long-term. You know, delivering brand experiences at a distance. This is an experience at a distance. But one of many examples, one of my personal favorites that we picked out is the London Marathon. You know, many marathons, sadly, around the year, last year did get canceled. The London Marathon did not get canceled. 43,000 runners participated, and they participated virtually. It was a brand experience at a distance. How people gather information and discover new things has completely changed. Think about your journey to work, your journey to university, to campus, how it used to be, how it was an integral part for us of perceiving the environment around us, seeing advertisements, getting a sense for culture by just seeing people walk down the street. What are they wearing? What are they doing? All of that has shifted. You know, a shift to shopping, the walk to the grocery store, the drive in suburbia to the big box grocery store as sort of like the singular bigger event twice a week or once a week on the weekend. It has been replaced, and it's really shifted into what we call atomized, continuous micro moments of shopping. Efforts to convey texture in the past, walking into a store, getting a sense for a texture of a fabric, a texture of a surface if you are, painting a wall in your apartment. How do we convey texture via digital? Complete shift. And then ultimately creating joy through immersive experiences, an entirely new paradigm for brands. So for every trend, we summarize them, and we give our clients and anybody out there really three broad tips. What might you begin to think about given the context of this brand? What should you say? And what is something that you can begin to plan for to do now and next week and next month? The one that I would highlight here is what businesses could start to say, because businesses have a role to play in giving people hope. And we believe we must consider brands' tone of voice in the context of what's happening right now. So it's important to choose a hopeful tone and messaging in all we have to say, in all communications that at the same time have to vary with local context. That brings me to the second trend this year, which is called DIY innovation, do-it-yourself innovation. So in light of collective displacement, which I just talked about, and it's very much in light of how we've all been displaced over the last 10 plus months, it's an anchor trend. This trend, do-it-yourself innovation, certainly reflects this. During a time of displacement, as traumatic as it is also inspiring to see, the kind of rise of human ingenuity that we've seen as a response to the challenges that we've all been facing. We all know that design and innovation love constraint. And during this time of profound constraint, many of us have not experienced. We're seeing people get incredibly creative in amazing ways. This results in a pressing need for organizations to rethink their approaches to innovation, by offering tools instead of prescribing solutions, and by empowering people to get more creative with how they live, how they play, how they work, how they learn, and how they shop. The key aspect of this trend is that innovation has shifted from a technology first to a people first approach. We've always seen life hacks, people hacking technology, products and services to work better in their lives. I'm thinking of me at the beginning of the pandemic, looking to an old moving box and reconfiguring that old moving box on top of my working desk at home as a hack to use it as my stand-up desk, because the stand-up desk is in the studio, and we've for a long time have had to refrain from working collectively in our studios. But what we're seeing here is people radically repurposing entire platforms to work better for their own experiences. So we need to think of platforms now as a half-painted canvas upon which people will create and finish a product based on their needs. If I think about Lebanon, for example, post-lockdown and in the wake of Beirut's devastating port explosion, what did schools do? They turned to WhatsApp immediately, and they turned it into an informal distant learning program. Or think of Travis Scott using Fortnite, a popular gaming platform, as his virtual concert venue. One of the things I love about this trend is it blurs the line between who's the creator and who's the customer. In the design field, we've long used co-creation methods as part of our design process, but now co-creation is as much of an output as it is an input. For companies to succeed, they will need to think of their products and services as suggestive of use instead of being prescriptive, to start designing tools and platforms that actually enable people to create for themselves and shape technology around their goals. Release these products and services into the world and begin to let the end user and consumer finish them. Just the other day, a friend of mine in the US told me about how a group of his cycling friends participated in last year's, so we're talking December 24 through December 31, Rafa, the cycling brand's Festive 500 challenge. It's a challenge to cycle 500 kilometers in the days between Christmas and New Year. So individually, they created route segments in a predefined territory that they had agreed upon. We collectively want to ride in this area, but as a group, why doesn't everybody co-create and contribute to our full 500K route? They were using Komoot or Strava, and then collectively they pieced their segments together into the entire 500K route in Strava's route builder tool to have a navigation file for their bike computers. Then they performed the ride in one go, together with safe distances between them in the real world. Just another example of hacking and reconfiguring individual platforms, in this case, for a collective greater purpose. So with this trend, again, what I would highlight is, what could you as a brand begin to say? We know that innovation isn't just about ideas. It's about having the courage and the fortitude to see new ideas through the development cycle and into the market. This is why time and stamina are really so crucial to innovation success. But we think that this trend really points to the ways to gain tremendous efficiency, focusing on everyday people's creativity. Now, the third trend is not to be confused with sweet dreams are made of this. It's called sweet teams are made of this. And what we're seeing here is a wholesale change in the reciprocal employment agreement between employer and employee. Much of the peripheral value of work has been lost for people by working from home. For those who can, many of the costs previously covered by the employer shifted to the employees. Working from home has become living in your office with family, partners, and childcare at the core of it. Now, the workplace is not dead, but now it has become a mindset that's supported by technology. The future won't be one size fits all. there are three different vectors of opinion. The opinion of the worker, the company, and often local government. Two of these, worker and employer, contain a range of sometimes quite contradictory views on what's next. Importantly, this trend stretches beyond office workers. It affects really, in our minds, any job that could be done remotely and those that are reliant on urban office hubs. But we're just entering an era of prototyping what the future of work could look like. For employers, there are opportunities to really innovate around four areas. Technology being the first one. New software and new hardware. We're still lacking the hardware and infrastructure suitable for long-term remote working. Laptops, desktops, monitors, cameras, ring lights, the infamous misuse or usability challenge of the mute button. There's a long way to go. And you got to believe that, some of the hardware and software manufacturers are all probably racing to the finish line to release new hardware and software integrated experiences that will change these setups that we currently have at home. Culture is the second one. Building a sense of belonging when we are physically apart and when face-to-face has become an absolute premium. The third dimension is talent, recruiting and rewarding talent. Students from Art Center, from any other organization around the world. And Silicon Valley is one of the examples that's really showing some interesting, signs here, shifting to pay for remote employees being aligned with the cost of living of where they are in their remote location. So moving away from this trend that we've seen over the last decade of attracting everyone to Silicon Valley, and instead reaching out across the globe where talent is and where talent chooses to live, but at the same time also reflecting that in in value and in pay. And then the fourth dimension is control, and that's really to a large extent about issues around privacy and the quality of client experience, and very much the employee experience. In the early days, as work from home for industries where feasible and possible literally happened overnight, companies like Staffcop and Sneak are just two examples that saw an incredible rise in really a run for their software, as employers were quite unsure around how to really set up and structure the relationship between teams, and especially between the workplace and the relationship the employer has with employees. From what we can tell and what we see, this has leveled out, and people and organizations have found much more successful ways than only to rely on these control mechanisms. So on this trend, what I would point out is what to begin thinking about. And that's really about considering the ethics that are in remote work as we examine absolutely the changing landscape of where and how employees engage with the company. The reciprocity lens, what you give and what you take, has to be central to that thinking. We have to acknowledge that each employee's home is still their personal space. And that has big impact on, the privacy and the freedom and the dress code and how we dress the stage, upon we appear and interact with the world, what that looks like. Now that brings me to the fourth trend, also quite intriguing and possibly one of my favorite trends this year. It's called Interaction Wanderlust, as we would say in German, or the Interaction Wanderlust. So this trend, it really builds on how people work, how people collaborate, and how people communicate with each other. It's been an overwhelming aspect of our lives, even before the pandemic, that screens have become extensions of ourselves and extensions of our bodies. and bridges of how we interact with each other. But in the last 10 months, as screens really became windows to the world, the interactions and the repetitive nature too often of these interactions have become dull. They've become exhausting. The joy and serendipity in our interactions have become lost. The walking down the hallway or an open space in a design studio, the moments that I have with another colleague, looking at their work, them giving feedback to what I might be working on. All of that has just evaporated or replaced with new rituals in the way we work today. And the importance of the periphery I described even in the previous trend, it is missing in our interactions. Now, there's been a convergence between design, content, and audience as our screens have become both a window and a stage. Many have taken to purposefully design the stage that they perform on when on screen. Much like even having not just a room in my apartment here in Berlin as the background, but actually picking the Fjord Trends background. The ubiquitous joke of dressy on top, a sweater about the future, and sweatpants on the bottom, which I'm actually not wearing in this case. The selection of background images we've begun to curate for various meetings, depending on the rooms we're working out of in our homes. With the falling cost and the rising quality of cameras, editing tools, lighting equipment, professional and amateur content producers began meeting in the middle and really beginning to influence each other. For example, in the US, where maybe a lot of you currently are dialing in from, late night host and comic Seth Meyers, like many in his field, started shooting his TV show from home beginning last March. And he was helped by an Australian YouTube personality, Matt Parker, for his tips on how to be better at producing content made in his home. And at the beginning, absolutely not just in his home, but made by himself. So design for screens has been dominated by leading operating systems for the past 25 years, to a certain extent, restricting, constraining creativity and leading to overuse and commoditization of templates, limiting our expectations of how we experience things online. And this has created sameness. I mentioned a sea of sameness early on, and fatigue in our interactions. The joy we should feel when interacting with other humans, with other colleagues, with friends, with business contacts, it has dulled. And with 2020 mostly limiting us to the screens we have at home, that peripheral vision of those interactions has been hugely constrained, in some cases also lost, something that many of us never knew we needed. But we've started to mourn the loss of the serendipity needed to feel kind of like that genuine connection with each other. It's where we get our inspiration. Now, to address this, we've seen significant experimentation around using gaming platforms, social platforms, mixed reality environments as a stage for third-party content and audience participation. Late last year, while the presidential elections were still an open contest in the US, President-elect Joe Biden and US Representative from New York's 14th Congressional District, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, they used Animal Crossing to meet voters and make random house calls to players' virtual islands and really interact with decided voters and undecided voters. We've seen a 47% rise in the use of Discord, traditionally a platform for gamers, but now in use for clubs, for art communities, or just groups of friends to connect. We here at Accenture Interactive introduced Discord during our most recent annual global design community event called Equinox, which again, also in light of COVID-19, It was a virtual event, but we introduced it as a platform to introduce and enable serendipitous connections and conversations. And now in the last few weeks, the rise of Clubhouse is just another phenomenon in this effort, to get away from screens, to move back to a certain amount of serendipity, voice, and just conversations. I actually discussed a few of this year's trends in Clubhouse just 2 weeks ago. Obviously, we'll see how they continue as they are looking forward and as they are really moving forward to shape, again, a new format of experience. So what would I point out? What would Fjord suggest in this trend? It's the topic around what could you start doing? The call to action here in our mind is really to find ways to recreate offline emotions in online contexts. Companies can innovate by redesigning audience participation to more effectively really draw audience into an experience as viewers or as active participants, as creators or co-creators. Genius Live moved from an online music lyrics source to a concert platform, enabling new and creative ways to connect both fans and artists. Swift, the virtual cycling platform, is rising to the occasion by allowing really anyone or any cycling club to schedule meetups. So groups can ride together while chatting via a Zoom call. Groups can ride together in different locations, in different time zones. And Rafa is a big supporter and leader again here. Now, a fifth trend starts to look into a different topic. It's called liquid infrastructure. Now, this trend is very much the flip side of collective displacement. How and where we get things has changed. And that's really forcing businesses to reshape how they manufacture, how they ship, how they store, and how they deliver. Our liquid expectations, expecting the best, regardless of what industry that expectation is focused on, now extend to the delivery and to the unboxing experience outside a brand's ecosystem. And this has implications for everything that happens before that moment. The cost to serve has been rising dramatically. Why? Well, we've got the loss of incidental spending, the retail health and sanitary costs have gone up, volume efficiencies of the idea of shop, and much, much higher returns. Meanwhile, direct-to-consumer models have proven to be difficult to scale. So closeness to the customer is clearly key, and brands need to rethink the trade-offs between experience and cost and design around the last 6 feet and the last 6 inch of the experience. Does delight or efficiency matter more is a key question to answer and to find solutions for. So this is leading brands to rethink the position of their supply chain and expand the idea of what their assets are used for. The rapid adaptation of initial lockdowns globally shattered conventions. Barclays Bank in the UK now expects its physical branches soon to be mainly used by call center workers and investment banking. In many cases, they created new partnerships ad hoc. We should expect the rise of a B2B sharing economy and partnerships over costly ownership investment. Dark kitchens serving home food delivery are just one sign of this. But remember that deprived hospitality experience brand saliency becomes so much harder to achieve in these circumstances. We participated recently, it was a Christmas gift in a cheese and wine event that was staged and experienced in my apartment via Zoom with a great storytelling by the founder and the purveyor of these artisanal cheeses and carefully selected wines. It was a wonderful experience. It was great food, but it's just not the same as being in a vineyard or a cheese shop, or just even picking up a piece of cheese as you walk down the grocery aisle in your Whole Foods, if that's what's in your neighborhood. New value propositions and business models will lead, in our view, to a two-speed innovation, the ability to respond rapidly to change, but stay true to long-term purpose with core programs. The value of a supply chain will go beyond efficiency, measuring it on growth, flexibility, and agility. Personalization at that point of delivery will become an opportunity to differentiate, possibly with 5G as a driver. So the supply chain redesign will enable brands to consider more local and more sustainable alternatives. In this trend, out of these three, what I would highlight is, again, what could brands begin to say at this point in time? This is the time to openly commit to shifting to sustainable redesign. Within 5 years, if not sooner, sustainability will be the biggest influence on infrastructure decisions. It's time to start figuring out how to design for sustainability now. Now, a sixth trend is called the empathy challenge. This trend addresses the challenge with empathy we have now and the stories we and organizations tell each other about ourselves as humans and as societies with systems designed, and sometimes, designed quite purposefully, unequally. There is too much to feel empathy for as we enter the 21st century. And in a world of high expectations and at the same time constant scrutiny, the challenge is to make the empathy we have for each other and that brands declare publicly actually mean something. When I think about awareness and concern about inequalities in all its forms, they've always been here. They've always been an undercurrent in many, many parts of the world, but they rapidly grew in 2020. Now, the global pandemic certainly contributed and accelerated and pronounced existing inequalities, but also created additional new inequalities. When I think about families and the impact of the pandemic and the impact of shifting work schedules and new challenges of dealing with childcare. For example, women were 3 times more likely than men not to work during the pandemic because of childcare needs at home and the way a lot of our family, communal, societal, and working structures are designed or established. Additional inequalities arise based on who has access to bandwidth, who has access to healthcare, who has access to work, to school, everything people need to function in our collective displacement creates acute need and a call to feel empathy for those who cannot get those needs met. But this also poses a challenge for organizations as they try to respond, which is making it more important than ever to manage these narratives well and move from narratives to action. We have so much to feel empathy for, and never have there been more different narratives fighting for attention than there are today. In our Fjord Trends for 2020, last year, we identified a growing attention and a growing tension for organizations between profit on one end of the spectrum and purpose, and a rise in taking a purpose-led approach. In the empathy challenge trend, this has only become more intense as companies now have to figure out how they want to handle often polarizing narratives, how to align their own purpose with these narratives, and which side of a story, if any side, they choose to support. Because staying silent, is also a choice, but it's a considerate choice that one needs to make. In September of 2020, Yelp's decision to warn users about businesses accused of racism sparked a tremendous amount of debate online. Also, last summer, Bon Appetit, a longtime US food magazine, their statement on their website in support of the Black Lives Matter movement resulted in an immediate reckoning, as both current and former employees pointed out the hypocrisy of this, as these current and former employees, shared stories of systemic racism at the magazine, which ultimately for Bon Appetit resulted in the resignation of the editor-in-chief. It's never been more important to get your brand's empathy narrative right, to tie it to your own purpose, and then importantly, make sure that it's more than a narrative, but that actions that give that empathy true meaning are in place. Patagonia is an example of a brand that has navigated this challenge very well. They have a clearly stated purpose, and then they make bold moves, that tie to it. Their actions are always very much in line with their purpose and with their value and with their belief system. So in this trend, the empathy challenge, what would I highlight here? It's again, what can a brand begin to say? Storytelling has always mattered. Stories have mattered as they're really central to us, to the human experience. But now they've become a core part also of a brand's image. So effectively managing the stories you tell to reflect the empathy you feel is aligned to the purpose that drives an organization, and the actions that organization takes has absolutely been never been more critical than it is now. It is crucial to really embed and cultivate and begin to explore within an organization the core tenets of its culture, and then really put the emphasis in a credible, in a tangible, in an authentic way on empathy. Now that brings me to the next trend, which is the seventh trend. It's called Rituals Lost and Found. I think this one really says it all in the title. It sums up for many of us the last 12 months. The things that we mourn, the things that we lost, people, friends, habits, rituals. But, we don't want this Fjord Trends report to be the pandemic report. It is, as I said at the beginning, the meta theme, the meta trend is mapping the new territories ahead of us. So it's equally a set of trends that are absolutely pointing at the opportunities ahead of us, and put hope as a spotlight on the new rituals that were born, the new rituals that were created, or the new rituals that were found. And rituals, both big ones and small ones, they form ultimately the framework of who we are, how we live. They can have a sentimental significance. Rituals are deeply human. They help us deal with loss, with routines, with sentiment. They can be both big, like a wedding, or the 75th birthday of a parent, and they can be extremely small, that daily cup of tea, that flat white or espresso, or that morning lap around the lake, going running, or the endless snooze hitting your alarm clock. Rituals come in different shapes and sizes, and extremely personal. The loss of rituals is, however, something that we share as humanity in 2020. And because of this loss, on one end, we've also seen equally, a rise in modern spirituality and mindfulness as a form of a coping strategy. If I look at the rise, the sudden hockey stick rise of of brands and businesses like Headspace and Calm, which is offered by American Express, for example, for as a premium card benefit. It's a clear sign that the focus on mindfulness and spirituality has been a coping strategy, and for many has become a found ritual, something that replaced the other rituals that we have put on ice, that we had to put on a hold. It's been a period for reassessment and searching for new meaning. That has inspired many people to develop new rituals. The family quiz event that is facilitated through Zoom calls. The family karaoke. Again, families across different coasts, families across different countries coming together in real life when they are one shared same household or virtually. We turned an area of our house into a cycling studio. You see there's a theme around cycling coming back a number of times. It has a smart cycling trainer, which is connected to, it's called Swift, which is a virtual cycling platform, a monitor to provide an immersive experience, and a stand for phones. And then at the same time, the tablet for getting other things done or being connected, not just virtually, but also through face and voice with another friend who is cycling with you at the same time. We have created new spaces in our places. Now, brands have an opportunity to step in and help people to regain a sense of control and empowerment, to really reconnect and heal. In the US, one of the latest stats that we looked at, 75% of customers tried different stores, tried different brands during the pandemic, and 60% of those expect to integrate these new brands or stores into their post-pandemic lives. Those brands who adjusted, provided relevance and fit, and offered a replacement for loss are the ones that people will take with them into the years ahead. Key is also to encourage rituals to transition from lost to found, helping people feel more relevant. How can we support psychological sustainability? How can we incorporate mental health considerations into products and services? While we are all in this together, our personal experiences absolutely vary, and they vary, I'm well aware of that, dramatically. So we have to remember that some people will be coping and grieving, while others might be absolutely embracing new sources of joy. So if you're a brand, one of the first things we suggest is to begin asking if your brand is part of a habit or if it's part of a ritual. Understanding the blank space that's left by a lost ritual, and then design an appropriate experience to replace it by focusing on both an emotional connection as well as providing a functional dimension. Can the brand act as a portal between our different selves? Can the brand provide a sense of belonging? Are the products and services that are that can be consumed in a social setting? Mars offered variety bags for Zoom costume parties and scary home movie nights during Halloween last year. Some of you may have taken advantage of that. In Japan, an app allowing smartphone users to cheer remotely during a match and then have their sound played out in the stadium, most of the times an empty stadium, live. Now, can the brand also be a source of comfort? Can it provide a me and we time, which is increasingly relevant as we've seen in the wellness category? Peloton clearly has seen has taken huge, benefit of that. Swift, the other cycling community that I've mentioned earlier, but also the rise of endless, very successful, home fitness social media influencers who are setting up experiences for an individual moment and equally curating wellness experiences that connect a community. Can the brand be an anchor? The big moments that are shared with others. We found a wonderful wedding website, shaddy.com, SHADDI.com, and they created a new weddings from home experience, seeking to bring as many of the most meaningful moments of an in-person event to virtual weddings. So you see, I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg, but there is a huge opportunity both for individuals to cope with the rituals that we've lost and to explore and adopt rituals that help us individually with the pandemic and all of the very personal impacts it has had on our lives. And equally, there's an opportunity for, new businesses to be launched, new products to be imagined, new services to thoughtfully provide offerings that fill that void that I think I've talked about at this point extensively. So what's the takeaway from this trend? We would suggest, again, 3 things, but if I highlight one here, it is, what could you do? The key is to encourage rituals to transition from lost to found. Key is helping people feel more relevant, supporting them, incorporating mental health considerations into products and services, and ultimately helping people to embrace new sources of joy. So this was a very rapid stroll through our 7 trends this year. We think, in all honesty, we say this every year, but we absolutely think these are, once again, these might be our best ones yet. Certainly, we've worked even closer than we ever have before with all of the thousands of designers and researchers around the company, but also with the research arm, the research team of our mother organization, Accenture, and many other parts across the firm. So the marrying up of early signals that we identify, the patterns that we see and aggregate from these signals, the collection of evidence that helps us to determine, is this a fad or is this a trend? And then finding that connective tissue between these trends, 7 again this year, has been a labor of love, for the better part of last year's summer. And I'm very, very happy to share this with you. I think this is a good moment to go on pause, and very happy to explore some conversations that I believe Christine will moderate or pick out, as well as to continue this conversation on any of the appropriate channels. You can find me as T. Müller NYC. And then most importantly, because the tolerance for a Zoom experience is limited and time is precious. For those who I was able to pique your interest, you can download the full Fjord Trends 2021 report at this address here that I'm showing. With that, let me go back to the front and turn this over to Christine.
Thank you so much, Thomas. That was unbelievably insightful and thought-provoking. And I would encourage all of our attendees that have any questions to please add those to the Q&A function on Zoom. I do see that we have one question, which from Chris Becker. Thomas, he's asking which of these trends are linked from 2020 and which trends from 2021 do you think will extend to 2022?
Great question. I mean, if I go back to, actually, let me reshare for a second and bring this up. Let's make sure, 1 second here. Presenter view, where is the slide? Here we go. Hopefully you are able to see this. So overall, 2021 trends very much anchor to realigning the fundamentals, which was the red thread through last year. This shift and this tension, which even started a year prior, tension was the red thread in 2019, leading to realigning the fundamentals. That movement, that momentum that I highlighted at the beginning, you know, sort of like this trajectory of capitalism, where can we continue on a journey only to chase profit as the only metric, or do organizations that succeed need to add, you know, a focus on purpose to them, really set the foundation for this. But then trends like, you know, many faces of growth, money changes, which started to really highlight and the trends that we're seeing around the world for, you know, screenless interactions, the disappearance of physical currency, the strong move towards paying contactless, which at that point in time was estimated to probably happen over the next 2 to 5 years at scale. Much of that has been exponentially accelerated and happened within the last 12 months. And then equally, you know, part of the empathy challenge very much also links back to this notion around life-centered design, which was a trend that we talked about last year, from expanding from being only focused on the individual user, so the me, to shifting to the we, and really considering sort of like a call to action for designers to expand from only thinking about that singular experience to really designing for a system of experiences and designing for an ecosystem of a larger community of people that are impacted or benefit. Now, if I forward that to, oops, 1 second, to this trend, which ones out of these all of these we're all living through and we're experiencing them right now? Which ones will have legs beyond the next 12 months? Well, hopefully, collective displacement as vaccinations are starting to, well, both pick up speed and reach more and more populations, not just in a small portion of the world, but in an inclusive way. Hopefully, certain freedoms and eventually many freedoms are returning, and we will no longer feel so displaced. So my hope will be that this one will recede, but many of the things that we've learned through that we will carry with ourselves. I think the impact on the workplace and the ability to work remotely, the ability to still do incredible work, we will carry absolutely forward. And we expect, and I personally expect, you know, from the hardware manufacturers and from the software manufacturers out there, seismic shift and advancements in the tools that we use to imagine better futures and then to create them. I think interaction, wanderlust, all of us are pushing what's possible. Your students at Art Center are pushing those boundaries, and we will see quite a bit through that as more and more businesses are moving, their computing power into the cloud and are able to do things on one end of the spectrum, a speed that is unimaginable, and on the other end of the spectrum, cost that's marginal. We will shape together the era of no longer only being confined to screens from this small to very large. The impact on supply chains absolutely will be with us in the future. So many of these, the one again that I hope we will start seeing it recede is collective displacement.
Thank you, Thomas. We do have a couple more questions. So I'm going to read now from Cam. Cam is asking, which virtual ritual replacements do you expect to endure or not when people are not as confined to their homes as they are now?
Yeah.
It's a great question.
That's a great question. And I think the rise, one field, one area that I absolutely believe is a new ritual that will remain and we will not lose when we regain freedoms again, is so much of what we're seeing in the health and wellness, innovation, access to gyms, from simple gyms to gyms like Equinox. Yep, and I've moved 5 years ago away from the US, so I don't know what some of the newer gym experiences are, but access is limited. It's either they are crowded, or you can't afford your gym membership. Participating in the wellness category through something as simple as a live stream on Instagram to meditate or to participate in yoga, I think has hugely widened the access. And there's many examples in that health and wellness category that I'm very certain that they will not recede, and that they are not replacing, but they are added rituals to that expand the access and the participation in that category. That's the first one that would come to mind, and I think that is wonderful because healthier individuals, healthier families, healthier communities, contribute to healthier lives and more creativity and better interactions. So I absolutely will bet on that will continue.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. We do have a few more questions, and then I also wanted to, since we have some students in our participants, I always feel like it's good to share a bit of advice as we navigate these very uncertain waters, for all of the graduates who've been graduating during the pandemic and going out into the workforce. I don't know if there's been a more challenging time to enter industry. Although it does feel that 2021 is a bit more hopeful, perhaps after we do the Q&A, you can just share a little bit of your insights directed toward our student community. So I'm going to just jump back into the Q&A. Ian asks, how is the Sweet Teams employee experience trend manifesting itself within Accenture Fjord as an organization?
That's a fantastic question. And, one part is the last 12 months have been a roller coaster experimentation prototype lab that, aside from making making technology work, shifting what in many places overnight, what was done in rooms, and you've all seen those pictures, and we all lived this day to day. It was no longer primarily about imagining those futures and designing these products and services on your computer first. It was much more about those huge whiteboards, those post-its, those ways to prototype ideas and concepts fast, shifting all of that overnight into wonderful, but at the same time, very clunky whiteboarding platforms has been nothing but rough in the first weeks and months. But it's improved, and it's improved quite dramatically, because first it's practice, then it's practice, then it's really identifying who are actually your leaders, your influencers, in many ways, even your Sherpas within your design teams, within your design communities, who are experts in enabling the same co-creation experience in a different tool set. But aside from that portion, I would say the bigger piece around suite teams are made of this is the combination of the effort, the focus, the stamina, the patience, and the sticking in this together that every single employee, every single designer has put forth, and at the same time, the incredible role that team leads, studio leads have had to and have played amazingly. The hours and the effort that they've put into keeping teams together, creating the space for conversation, creating the room for dialogue, constantly finding ways to check on the pulse of teams, having a sense for burnout, having a sense for mental health topics, and also being strict and protective about when you're on and when you're off. The beauty about the physical workspace, right, was you go there and you leave. The danger, if you don't establish rules and an environment that respects them, that everybody is on 24/7, and that does not lead to incredible creativity, because we all get tired when we spend so much time in these screens. So experimentation with the tool set, and the empathy and the just endurance of so many of our team leaders, and really collectively the entire team, is what has gotten us through this year, and gotten us well through this year. There's many wonderful new projects that have launched that at the beginning we thought, how are we going to do this? This is our world has been turned upside down.
Thomas.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So we've got about 4 more questions. I'm also looking at the time, so I think we'll try to go through these, and we may have room for one more question, but if anyone wants to submit another question, you've got a couple minutes to do so, and I'll just jump right in so we could go through these, because there's some juicy ones in here. So this is from Morgan. Do you have any thoughts about how the recent Reddit-fueled trading craze might impact the market, brands, or investing in general in the years to come? It's referring, I think, to the GameStop. What else are they doing? AMC and price of silver, market
Yeah,
manipulation.
fantastic question. I'm going to suggest we move that into a different forum or
Okay.
into a private channel. And I'll be completely honest. I'm very aware of the topics that I know a lot about, and the topics that I'm not an expert in. So I will pass on that one. But
Okay.
I see some other ones.
Yeah.
John Kerry.
Yep.
What would you say to a business or founder of a digital product to focus on in their design starting today? What should they design for? I think, there's a huge responsibility and opportunity for designers to really make sustainability um, a core signature, calling card for their business, as well as circular design. I think the opportunity we have as a practice and as a community to influence the trajectory of production and creation of goods and services is tremendous, and we have the opportunity to influence which paths are being taken, and how we are contributing positively or not so positively to the futures ahead for us on this planet. So sustainability and circular design are some of my top suggestions I would look into.
Thank you.
And then I'm going to pick out Mr.
Oh,
Andrew
you are?
Falcon.
Okay.
Hello, a dear colleague and former colleague and good friend. He's trying to put me on on a piece of thin ice here. Can I predict or guesstimate what the meta theme might be this time next year? I think what we will be what we will be dealing with, and what we might see, and that's really Thomas Müller's personal guesstimate, is something that really will package together an incredible burst of entrepreneurial activity, and an energy that's been pent up and bottled up and locked up for the last 12 months, that will result in a rise of new ideas that are going to focus on addressing topics around inequality, better access to education and health, and just better functioning communities. The pandemic has highlighted all of these things so extremely, and the energy that I am and that we are seeing online and in so many discussions, I think we will see a dramatic rise of new ideas and new startups, unlike we've seen in the last number of years. People are ready to get out and start new things. Christine, are you
Yes.
still there?
Yes, of course. Sorry, I wasn't sure if you were going to choose your next question. I will happily read you one we have from Atria. Reimagining future of work. What are the scenarios you think will be widely adapted by organizations, and what are the scenarios that we will see mostly being adopted by the trend center companies, which would take longer to be adopted by other organizations?
I mean, reimagining the future of work is very front and center for us and for so many of our clients. And how we work, the spaces, physical and virtual, that we create to enable ways of working and types of working, and then the culture that's required to do that in a trusted way, in an inclusive way, in a focused way. So workspace and culture are the three themes that are really going to rise to the forefront here. We do believe we will not go back 100% to the way we've worked in the past. Many organizations who thought we need to have, our desks filled and people in office spaces are realizing that they haven't seen a loss in output. They haven't seen a decline in creativity. They haven't seen the kinds of negative impacts that they were fearful of. Quite the contrary. So companies will find, and we will, I'm sure, experiment with what's the right balance between, working somewhere and working at the places we, came together in the past. And we are also likely to see how those places get then adapted to the purposes that we still will need. Prototyping, co-creating these futures, developing new business and product approaches together with our clients. The next chapter will be one that is a combination from work at a specific place where many of us come together for specific purposes, and at the same time allowing families and individuals to also work in the places that they live or where they choose to.
Thank you, Thomas.
Go
ahead.
Yeah, a last point to mention, certainly within this context also of future of work, and also one question that I saw earlier is around, what should graduates and how can students come out of this last 12 months? A year ago, a lot of you approached me around sharing portfolios, many of which I had a chance to see, and of course looking for opportunities to either return to the workplace or start your first career. This time, a year ago, was very difficult for a young graduate or somebody who's returning to work after maybe a graduate education. The work places and job openings have gradually shifted quite a bit. I'm not going to speak for other companies, but I certainly have not seen in the last 5 years, now in my 6th year here at Fjord and Accenture, so many openings across a wide range of positions as we are seeing right now. I especially have noticed that quite a lot across Europe, where the amount of interesting, relevant projects that are coming in from clients is much greater than our teams can deal with. So openings are popping up nearly in every city where you see an Accenture Interactive Studio or a Fjord Studio. A lot of them in the strategic and the conceptual phases, design research positions. So it's shifted within 1 year quite a bit. So wanted to mention that. A lot of these listings are posted on our various sites for the various studios.
Thank you, Thomas. That's great to hear, and I think very positive for our students as they're graduating and going into the workforce. I see we've just got a couple more minutes and we have 3 questions. So Thomas, I'm gonna just let you choose the last one that you feel the most interested.
Let me see.
And I just, while Thomas is choosing, I want to thank everyone for attending today. Art Center offers lots of professional education, industry talks, and creative entrepreneurship programming. So please stay tuned, and we look forward to joining you again. And I'm going to turn it back over to Thomas to close us out with
I'll
this.
pick out one more question, which
Okay.
is curious about if co-creation embedded in most of these trends is a theme that will continue, even if and when we're going back to our places of work, and remote work and distance is no longer necessary in the same way. We are living through it right now. You know, my answer would clearly be co-creation, and taking an inclusive approach to the way you shape design teams and the way we work with our end, users, and with our clients, will absolutely not go back to a different format. As a matter of fact, I would say we've all adopted that and really made that the way we think, the way we act, the way we create years ago. And the last 12 months have forced us to even refine that approach under extreme constraints, how to co-create, how to even conduct under these circumstances insight gathering and qualitative research, and nevertheless succeed and launch products and ideas that creates better lives and has a positive impact on people. So we will keep that in our toolkit, and we've even probably honed it quite a bit, because constraints make us better. We hone our approach, and we get more resourceful.
Thank you, Thomas. Well, I think we're about there. This has been just so much information and a lot to digest, but incredibly insightful. I hope that the year ahead brings good health and a lot of opportunity to all of us. And I just wanted to thank you again, Thomas, for sharing these insights, for sharing your time and wisdom, and being such a wonderful collaborator and supporter of Art Center. And we hope to host you in LA and hope to see you in Berlin a little bit later this year. Thank you to all of our attendees. We really had a global audience today, and it was really thrilling to see all the great questions and interactions. So thank you all. I believe the deck, there's a link in the chat. We will be sharing the recording for those interested on our YouTube channel. I also in the chat added the email address that you can email us if you'd like us to send it to you directly. That's prodev@artcenter.edu. And just one more chance to thank you again for being here. Thanks, Thomas.
Yeah, no, I mean, thank you is really from me to you. I'm honored and humbled to be able to share our trends with this group. So thank you for inviting me back, Christine, and Art Center.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Take care. All right.
Be safe, everybody. Stay healthy. Have a great day. Have a great night wherever you are. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye.
Bye.